Good morning, bonjour, comment ça va? Ni hao, hola, ohio, bienvenue, wan yin, bienvenidos, yokoso, and welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name, if I haven't already met you, is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemological storyteller. And each and every week, I have the honor and privilege of coming into your home and taking you on a journey to places you've never been before, to hear stories you've never heard before. Each week, I get the magnificent opportunity to take you on a mental, physical, and spiritual adventure into the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry. And because I know the transformational powers of stories, I've experienced it, I've seen it happen. Because I know that I have absolute confidence, no doubt at all, that somewhere along this journey that we will take together, you will hear a story that's going to move you. You will hear something that's going to make you look at the world in a different way. And my mission each and every week is to create a sound that no one has ever heard. A sound that resonates inside of you. A sound that makes you begin to hear the music in your heart and in your mind. And my hope is that you take that sound and that you use it as a bridge, as a template, as an inception point to help you discover the value of your own stories. This is the first episode of the second season of Gem Hunter Stories, and I'm so proud to be able to say that. I wanted to just take a second to thank all of you who have continued to support and send me comments and ideas about the show. I want to welcome a brand new viewer, Luciana from Natal, Brazil. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Gem Hunter Story show is now being broadcast in 5 continents, and I'm tripping about that. So thank you, all of you who continue to watch and support this show. Today this is gonna be deep. So take out a piece of paper and a pencil right now, because I'm just letting you know, I don't even know like where. This is gonna be a 2-part show today, and we're gonna start doing Thursdays. But I need you to get this. For the whole time I've been on the show, I always open by saying, discover the value of your stories. Now we're going to start to take it to the next level. Because once you begin to understand your value, once you begin to understand the power of stories, you're going to have to learn what to do with that. Because it's not as it's like anything else of power. You have to understand its power, what it can do, what happens to you, positive and negatively. So we're going to unpack that, and the way we're going to do that is by this month's gemstones, citrine and tourmaline. I'm sorry, citrine and topaz. Citrine and topaz. Those of you born in November, happy birthday. And citrine is an extremely powerful gemstone, especially in terms of stories, because citrine is the stone of imagination. Of imagination. In fact, for me to really properly set up the importance of citrine to stories, let me read a quote from one of my heroes in my life, as Albert Einstein. I love Einstein. I love his work. I love the way he thought. And what he said was, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge refers to facts, conditions, or principles already known and is thus rooted in the past. Through knowledge alone, there can be repetition only. Let me say that again. Through knowledge alone, there can be repetition only. No creativity. The creative powers of human beings and all beings are rooted in imagination. Before someone could create the laser beam, the sonnet, the souffle, it had to be imagined first. Imagination is the means by which one turns towards the time stream from the future, opening the self beyond what has been into the realm of what can be. Now, you may have gotten some of that, but this just describes, here is Einstein talking about imagination, and this is the man whose mind was so vast that he saw galaxies. He's E equals MC squared. We're talking about time travel, things like this, the basis of the universe. This is what he said of the importance of imagination. So once you begin to understand the power of your stories, then you begin to understand, like a director, a conductor in a symphony, you begin to understand how many instruments that you have to play in that's available to you as you're telling that story. So here's the gemstone citrine. I almost had it. Here's the gemstone citrine. This is my logo. This is the logo of the Gem Hunter. Gemologicals, appraisals, and storytelling services. Art, science, history, magic. This is the logo that I wear on my neck. It has rubies from the top, from 12 o'clock position, ruby clockwise, rubies, sapphires, 6 o'clock position, I have emeralds, and at the 9 o'clock position, I have citrine, because citrine is a gemstone of imagination. Now, put that together with what we have already understood about the powers of stories. That means that, let's break it down real simple. You have a toolbox called a story. You understand that a story has 7 parts to it. There's 7 drawers: sound, passion, the hero, the antagonist, which is the most important part of the story, awareness, transformation, and then sound again. And we won't go over that. Maybe later on we'll go redo a review on what those 7 elements is. But just understand that is the box of the story. Now, what you're beginning to understand, what I want you to understand, is that how imagination provides you with all the tools. Any tool that you think about, you can put into that box, and that box becomes part of your story. Just like I have been saying that gemstones, this this month we're going to be dealing with citrine and topaz. Gemstones are only imbued with that power because you believe that it has that power. You believe that it has that power. Now, let me show you how deep that is. Citrine is a quartz. Citrine is a quartz. That's what citrine is. Citrine is a quartz. So now let's go back to the science that we talked about before. Citrine is a quartz, and a quartz is the most abundant gemstone on Earth. I'm sorry, mineral on Earth. Quartz is the most abundant mineral on Earth. So what citrine is something is the rare form of quartz. It's a rare form of quartz. Citrine's colors go all the way from yellow or bright light yellow, or really light yellow, to more of an amber color, even to an orangish color. Lots of these stones at this color, at this level of saturation hue, are being treated. A lot of citrine comes from quartz because, again, comes from amethyst. Amethyst is a quartz. Citrine is a quartz. So even though if you have a light yellow color, in fact, citrine, the word citrine comes from the French word citron, which means lemon. So that's what it normally comes into. It's rare. The color comes from iron that has gotten into the molecular structure, and it creates that color, a yellowish color. And then what you can do is you can treat it to intensify the color, or if it's amethyst, which is also a quartz, you can change the colors into more of a deeper oranges and red and amber colors. Citrine has been around since 300 BC. The Greeks knew about citrine. But what I want you to concentrate on, let's go back to citrine is the gemstone of imagination. And as I've told you before, this is a journey for me because I never really believed in metaphysics, so I don't want to talk like, oh, I've known metaphysics for years. No. I'm literally, this is a journey for me too. So what I'm learning is that citrine is a gemstone of imagination. But what gets me is I began to understand how it works. And that's why we're having this conversation. Because first of all, if quartz is the most abundant gemstone, right? If quartz is the most abundant mineral, and citrine is a rare form of that mineral, then citrine is just like imagination. Citrine is just like imagination. It's rare. Everybody has imagination. Imagination is possible, but as we get older, we begin to lose that childlike imagination that we used to have. That's why when I was teaching for the Chicago public school system, I always liked working with middle schoolers. I was supposed to really work with high schoolers, but the reason I wanted to work with middle schoolers, in some countries is elementary school, because the older you get, the more further you get away from the concept of once upon a time. So kids can tell you that imagination is there, and any of you who have children understand that a kid can play with a string all day long and you go, what you doing? And your child will say, Mommy, this is my horse. And you're like, it's a string. In your head, but in your child's mind, that's a horse. And When you understand that your child truly believes that's a horse, that's when you begin to understand the power of stories. Because that same capability that your child has, you have that still inside of you. You just forgot. So, citrine is the gemstone of imagination. So, you discover the value of your story. So, now you have developed your imagination. And as you begin to develop your imagination, you're beginning to understand the things that you used to be into. You know, like we had Sonia, a wonderful guest, Sonia Wilson, talking about her godfather's sweet potato pie. And just an aside, I had some. Oh my God, Sonia, thank you, thank you. Yeah. So, her godfather planted the seed in her mind of what sweet potatoes should taste like. You want to start a business, you wanted to start a school, you wanted to have, so whatever you now you begin, because you've been watching this show, you begin to understand that the story is the key. The story is the key. Your belief in that story. Very soon, as a man thinketh, very soon so altered has his mind become, that the workshop can no longer hold. So now you understand that the story is your orchestra. Imagination, what I'm telling you today, imagination is the way you create the tools that you need for the story to move forward. That imagination is the characters that you put in your story to make the story that you create. You create those characters, good and bad. If you're dating somebody and you know in your heart and your mind, like, no, this is not going to work at all, and you continue to do that once you understand that, okay, and it's unfortunate, but you have to take part in that and understanding that you created that character in your story. You said, we need a bad guy. What kind of bad guy? Oh, I don't know, Darth Vader kind of bad. And if that's what you're dating, that's a part of your story. And you, as the director, decide, you know what, we don't need his character, kill him off or whatever else. That's what you need to do. Not in a bad way. He just doesn't work in your story. So now you got the story, you got the box. Imagination puts the tools in the box. You use gemstones like citrine to help you create that imagination. So now you have more tools in the box. You understand the value of your story. You decide to start that business. You decide to create that product. You decide to create that piece of music, and everybody doesn't get it. Everybody doesn't get what you're saying. Everybody doesn't hear your sound. And I've known this for a long time. I've seen this, but it really happened to me just last week, last episode. I have people in my life who I call my New York Times critics. Those group of people that they understand your sound, they understand where you want to go, they know all the background stories, they know what you want to create. So you call them up and you ask them, how was it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Things of this. People think, oh, Barry, it's just as easy. None of this is easy, for real. So you ask them, and the responses I get were varied. Was varied. And I was shocked. It was like, what? Somebody gave me a 7 out of 10. And I was like, what? And when you begin to understand that everybody is not going to hear your sound, you have to begin to understand that just because you came up with that story, just because you recognize the value of that story, doesn't mean that everybody is going to value that story. This is citrine. beautiful gemstone. I know people who are salivating right now because they love citrine. Citrine is when they say, I know one person who could identify citrine from like a hundred paces, like, oh, absolutely, that's just citrine. How do you know? Look at it. Because it resonates with her. Even though it's just quartz, it's a rare variety of quartz. With her, it's like it speaks to her. The citrine actually is a stone that activates the sixth chakra, which is the third eye. Okay, again, I'm saying these things, I'm learning these things. I don't want to come off like, oh yeah, absolutely no. I don't know what's the first and second eye, but the third eye is what this gemstone activates. And she is someone who is into this whole meta, so it relates to her. But as beautiful as this gemstone may be to her and many people that I know, everybody doesn't like citrine. They don't like it. Citrine is not, in fact, citrine, some books don't even carry citrine as a separate stone. They just kind of squeeze it into the bigger GIA, the Gemological Institute of America. I just checked again this morning. They the whole book, this is the binder. This is just the binder. There's two of them just for colored stones alone. All right. And when you look at citrine, they have separate categories for each stone. Citrine is not a separate category. Citrine is not even, it's covered under quartz because it is. And then it's covered under amethyst because you can change amethyst into citrine. So it's kind of like put it in. So citrine is not one of those stones where people go, oh, J-Lo got a citrine ring. And nobody's going to say, oh, well, that's nice, because they don't value it the same way. So even though people that I know value citrine on that level, there's lots of people that don't. And the lesson that you get out of that is everybody is not going to hear your sound. And the way I learn things oftentimes is by seeing movies. And one of the movies that I absolutely love was the one that I gave you for your homework assignment, because it speaks to exactly what I'm talking about. The Great Gatsby, the movie came out in 2013. There's different versions of The Great Gatsby. This was the Jay-Z version of it. And I forgot the director's name. Forgive me. His version was more based on the relationship between Jay Gatsby and Daisy. And there's that scene that I gave you that I just want to unpack a little bit, because that probably just went past so many people. But think about what happened. Gatsby was poor. He had nothing. He mentally grew himself up. He became an officer during the World War I. He went to Daisy's house, and he knew on a spiritual level that he loved this woman. He loved her. Like she is, a lot of women, men too, but a lot of women, they're looking for the one. Well, that's who Daisy was to Jay Gatsby. The one. But at the same time, because he understood stories, he understood his relationship on a higher level to God. He knew that there was a trade-off. He said it. He said, I knew I could rise, but I always knew that I could have to rise by myself. So he knew if he kissed this woman, as he said, that he would be wed to her forever. He knew that. You see the scene where he's walking through the doors, the picture door frames. He's walking through the doors into the garden where here is Daisy. Here is Daisy, just the essence of everything that he wanted. She was spectacular. They didn't say that. You could see the way he was looking at her. And he had to make that compromise. So he said, so before he kissed her, he waited. I took a moment and he looked up to the sky, looked up to the heavens, looked up to God, and said something so profound. As the guy who was writing the story about him said, he said that he knew if he kissed her, that his mind would never again be able to romp like the mind of God. I mean, take a second to think about this. This is a man looking up to heaven, a place where he knows what it looks like. He knows the power of stories. He knows he can do anything he wants to do. But he loves this woman so much that he's willing to give it all up. And then he said, and then I just let myself fall. And you can see spiritually him falling from heaven to this mortal place. And he was willing to do that for her, for Daisy. She was his flower. Remember a long time ago that obsession commercial? She was like a fever from which I shall never recover. That's what he felt. And despite loving her on that level, she didn't give a flying beep-a-doo beep about her. Didn't care about him at all. I mean, she hung with him, she slept with him, stayed in the hotel, in the man's castle, his chateau. Enjoyed all the things that, playing golf on the top of a lakefront. No, all on top of a lake, all these things. And when it really came down to it, she didn't care. Not only did she not care, but she went back to the man that abused her, that was a womanizer, that was misogynist, that was cheated on her like it was Christmas. And yet she went back to him. She didn't hear Gatsby's sound. She didn't hear a sound. So when you begin the process of learning how to tell a story, the importance of telling a story, and you begin to understand your value, you have to understand that there are people, for whatever reason, they're not going to hear your sound. There's going to be people that you help free of charge. You help them see different things, and then they're like, oh, well, okay, I got it. Boom. All of us know people who you have given to, you have loved, you have cared for, whatever, just because, and they just didn't appreciate what you did. They didn't hear your sound. If you're a parent, you definitely understand that all you did to give to this person is just like minimized. Like, oh, okay. There are people, and what I'm here to tell you is two things. One, you're not alone. And two, that there is such a power to understanding. Once you understand that everybody's not going to hear your sound, there's a power there's a freedom to understanding that. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how you are in the same boat as Mozart, Galileo, okay, Einstein on the other side when we come back from our commercial. And we're back. When you think in history, as I always say, art, science, history, man, when you think in history, you have to understand some of the greatest minds in history, they didn't hear their sound. Tesla, my boy Tesla. The reason why you and I are having this conversation today, the reason why I can sit here and say that this show is right now being seen in 5 continents is because of this guy. Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla, his imagination, his mind was beyond. Cell phones, and I don't know where my head. Cell phones. He drew this out. This was old, the Note 10. He drew this out in the 1800s. And yet Tesla died in the New Yorker hotel. I was there the last time I went to New York. I went to the New Yorker hotel. I was only 1 block away from it. He died in room 3257, and with stale crackers. They found him dead with stale crackers, stale old milk, and a whole bunch of cats. This is the man that literally saw the 21st century back in the 19th century. He saw a century, and yet nobody knows him. You ask most of y'all today, I'm like, who's that? Other than the car, you don't know what he did, what he created, what his sound was. And nobody heard it. Nobody heard his sound. Or at least they didn't hear it in his lifetime. And it wasn't until years later they said, oh, okay, yeah, all right, let's give him credit. Galileo, my boy Galileo. I love Galileo. The father of modern science. Galileo, let's go back to your 7th grade science, history and science. Galileo was the guy that understood and defended that the earth, that the sun wasn't in the center of the universe. The sun was not the earth wasn't in the center of the universe. They believed that for 500 years of history. They believed that. And Galileo was like, nah, that's just not true. To the point where, and the problem with Galileo is he was so arrogant. Galileo let people know that you're stupid. He just said, you know what? You're stupid if you believe that. Here's the facts. Here's the numbers. And unfortunately, when he called people stupid, he also called his friend, the Pope, stupid. In fact, he called him a simpleton. He wrote this book, and it was kind of, you know how you have those rap battles between, back in the day, Puffy and Tupac, and they battle East Coast, West Coast. Well, that's what they did back in the 14th century. And Galileo called the Pope a simpleton, and the Pope was reading the book one day, and, because they didn't have internet, he was reading a book, and he saw a simpleton, and he heard his own words coming back to him. And he was like, is he calling me a simpleton? And they locked Galileo up. They told him, you have a choice. We're either going to kill you, Spanish Inquisition, pulling out your nails and other stuff, or you can be on house arrest if you don't take back all your words. And eventually Galileo said, well, okay, I don't want to die. So, okay, cool. And they locked him up for the rest of his life. He was in house arrest. For the last 15 years, he was in house arrest. In fact, they didn't like him so much that they didn't even allow him to be buried where he wanted to be buried. Like, I'm in Chicago, and if I die, I maybe be buried in Chicago. I don't want to be buried in Arizona. That's what they did to Galileo. And it took 400 years for people to say, you know what, maybe he was right. Everybody is not going to hear your sound. That idea that you thought in your mind, there's somebody out there looking at you like, really? You doing all that from sweet potato pie? What's the big deal? What's the big deal? I remember when Jeff Bezos created Amazon. I know exactly where I was when I called him stupid. I literally said, it was a radio broadcast. They were talking about the new company called Amazon, and him and I guess his wife were selling books in their kitchen. I thought that was the most stupidest idea ever. one, because why? You had Barnes and Nobles and Britannios and all these other different Doubleday. I worked for Doubleday bookstore. So why would somebody sell books out of their kitchen? And then what made it worse, he made this company, he called this company Amazon. What a stupid name. Why would you name a book company Amazon? Okay. Okay. Some people are going to have their sound heard and some people are not. In the freeing aspect of that, the freeing aspect of that is understanding one that everybody is not going to hear your sound. When people tell me that they don't like me for whatever reason, I tell them that the line forms to the left. There's a whole bunch of people that don't like me. Lots of them. My mother's probably, I don't know, 3, 4, depends on what I did. You know, I know, I imagine going to heaven, seeing my mom, and my mom's gonna be, I'm like, Mom, it's so good to see you. And look what I did. She'd be like, why didn't you get an A? I mean, something. And I'd be like, all right, oh, Mom, look at my wings. Well, yeah, okay, they're nice. Because everybody is not, and but when you understand how people are going to treat you, you understand that you have to keep on going because you have discovered the value of your sound. You also have to understand that everybody is not going to hear what you have to say. They're not. I spent decades of my life being angry, decades of my life. As I told people all the day, black is not just a color for me. That was Darth Vader for me. That's who I was and still am inside of me. But because I have begun to just understand why I'm here. What purpose do I have in the 61 years of my life? What purpose do I serve? What sound have I created? And everybody's not going to hear it. There's lots of gemologists. There's a whole bunch of them. There's not a whole lot of African American gemologists, but there's lots of gemologists, and they will talk to you. There's tons of websites. Well, the citrine is the silicon dioxide rare version of quartz, and of course, quartz is ubiquitous. That's not what I'm talking about. And when you begin to understand your story, as you begin to put your story together, you have to understand that no matter how good you look, no matter how nice your teeth are, no matter what your body's like, no matter how many fans you got, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be like, yeah, right, whatever. I don't like Beyonce. I mean, she's okay. And I know there's some people like, oh my God, he doesn't like Beyonce. Yeah, Beyonce's okay. Beyonce's okay. To me, there's other people that sing. That's how I feel about it. Now, here's the trick part. There will never, if Beyonce and Jay-Z do a reality show, there will never be a scene or episode of their reality show where you see Beyonce in the room and Jay-Z hears her, on the other side of the mansion through the intercom. He runs into the room. Baby, 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 what's wrong? What's wrong? I can't believe it. What's wrong, baby? What's wrong? I heard that Barry Mixon don't like me. That's never, ever going to happen. Ever. Jay-Z, Beyonce, as she's sitting in her multi-million-dollar house, in her tens of $1,000 bed, in her $1,000 gown, is not going to be crying because Barry Mixon didn't hear her sound. So if that works for her, then that works for you. If Galileo 500, 600 years later is now known as the father of modern science, even though people wanted to kill him, literally, years later, we still hear his sound. Mozart. And we talked about how I feel about Mozart. Mozart talked to God. Mozart died 35 years old. When he was 4, he wrote his first concerto. When he was 7, he wrote his first symphony. When he was 12, he wrote a full-scale opera. 600 pieces of music. Many of them were considered masterpieces at the time he lived, while he was living, and yet Mozart died penniless. He was a pauper. They buried him in an unmarked, some reports said they buried him in an unmarked grave, but yet 217 years later, when Comcast, the system that I'm on right now, that many of the viewers all over the world, well, some not all over the world, but they have different versions of it, but at least here in the United States, Comcast, probably all over the world, because Netflix and everything, but anyhow, all over the world, when they introduced the Xfinity system, whose music did they use? They used his music, Sanctus, Sanctus, God, God, as his opening, because they heard his sound and still hear his sound today. So when you are beginning to develop your sound, your music, when you hear the music, understand that everybody's not going to get it. And the empowering part of that is, once you understand that everybody's not going to get it, no matter what you do, now you're free to create whatever you want to create. Now you're able to create whatever you want to create. Now when people say, oh, I don't like that, well, the Wright brothers, why? If God wanted men to fly, he would have created wings. Wright brothers said, okay. When Coco Chanel created her phenomenal designs, and, of course, we're living in 19th century, 20th century, still the same feelings that men have was women. Well, you're a woman, you can't do that. Coco Chanel said, another powerful word. Okay. When Madame Marie Curie, who was not only French, she wasn't French, she was Polish. And, they still have all this national feelings about French versus anybody else. When her husband died because of he had radiation poisoning, but he got ran over by a horse. And they were calling Madame Marie Curie all types of, inappropriate names. Remember, this is a family show. She was a harlot because she was dating. She didn't stop because people didn't hear her sound. She kept doing it. A citrine is no less valuable because you don't like it. If you're in a relationship and if your partner doesn't understand you, doesn't feel your sound, what I tell the men all the time is, if you have a citrine and you know that this woman is your citrine and you love citrine and you married her, you got involved with her, you've been with her, and because you loved her because she was a citrine, she doesn't stop being a citrine just because you decided that you wanted an emerald. People make romance is just like gemstones. You find, and I can only speak from a man loving a woman. It doesn't, just because you love that woman and you love that woman totally, and that woman did not feel you, doesn't make you any less than you, or at least you have to check it out. When you are telling your story, as I told many people, you have to be two people. You have to be the person telling the story, and you have to be the person in the audience. The things that I've done in my life, many of the things, it was because people told me, Barry, that's, no. When I was going through, I think this was like between my second, third therapy, my best friend told me point blank, and I was just insane. My best friend told me, I've never met somebody so hell bent on destroying your own life. So I went back to the therapist thinking, you know what, help me, because I don't even know where to start. Because I had to develop my sound. I didn't know where I was. That's why I was homeless, because I heard all these, not voices. I didn't know my identity. I didn't know my sound. I didn't know that what music I was, was I playing R&B? Was I playing jazz? Was I playing classical? What was going on inside of me? And I was letting everybody else tell me what my sound was. And the sole purpose of this show is to help people discover their own sounds, because we live in a world where if you don't, somebody's going to do it for you. And just because you might be an orange stone doesn't mean that you're a topaz. Tomorrow we'll talk about topaz, and you'll see the similarities. For a very long time, citrine was thought of as topaz. There are people who are thought of other things, and that's not who they are. And in part, it's because one, they don't know their own sound, or they don't know their own sound, or they've allowed other people to create a sound for them. That's it. And it all fits in the whole conversation of story, and it all fits into imagination. What do you imagine to be? When you think once upon a time, what did you want to be when you grow up? When you grew up, Mom, I want to be this. Mom, I want to be this. Dad, I want to be this. What was that? That was the sound. That was the music. And some of you are still hearing that music, and then you just la la la. I don't want to hear it. No, no. Don't let somebody mute your sound. The one thing we all can agree on is all of us are not going to be here one day. All of us. Republican, Democrat, independent, male, female, gay, straight, whatever. All of us, one day, they're going to be like, Barry Mixon not here no more. Dang, what happened to him? I like this show. So I only have a limited amount of time to create a sound. That's what happened to Mozart. That's what happened to Einstein. That's what happened to Galileo. That's what happened to Coco Chanel. That's what happened to Pablo Picasso. They created a sound, and they let their imagination, they let the powers, the energy, the way they interact with the light create the imagination. So that's why you can have something as ubiquitous as quartz, the most abundant mineral in the world, and yet in that quartz can still be yellow and orange I mean, I don't even know. I mean, just beautiful colors. This is still the same gemstone. This is still the same gemstone. All these gemstones are citrine, citron. So what gemstone are you? What's that music? What's that sound? What are you going to do with your imagination? Because anything that has ever created, anything that you've ever wanted to do, started from a story, started from something that someone imagined in their mind. And once they imagined that in their mind, that story, that imagination congealed into a story. They didn't see it. Einstein thought of E equals MC squared. The thought of it, the concept of it started when he was coming home from work. And he looked at this this clock tower, and he thought about time as the train was moving away from the clock. He thought about how did that translate to the universe, and he created that. The things that I talk about, the things that I read about in book like this book, the Book of Stones, when they say that citrine is the manifestation, personal will, mental clarity, creativity, that's what this stone is supposed to be. These are the characteristics of this stone. And the real question is, whether you believe that. And if you believe that, if that is something that fits into your overarching story, then you use it as part of your logo. I'm gonna get it together. You use it as part of your brand. You use it as your presentation. You use it as the way you go into an interview. You use it in everything that you do, everything that every day you wake up, every day that you breathe another breath, you know that God has given you another day to create a sound. And you know, starting today, that everybody's not going to hear your sound necessarily. And that's okay. So tomorrow, we're going to have another show tomorrow, continuing on with Topaz. And I invite you to come because there'll be a whole nother level that I want to take you to. But until tomorrow, I want you to take a moment in your day to look at your life, look at what you want to be, think about the things that you wanted to create, and take time to discover the value of your own stories. Au revoir, Atatella. See you tomorrow.